Good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce you to Celes Davar, who is from rythyms in Nova Scotia. He's a practitioner, trainer, and experiential travel and regenerative tourism specialist. And he coaches community and tourism business throughout Canada, looking at creating experiences. And we actually met online, not on a dating site, but having online conversations about our shared passion for experiential and immersive engagement. Actually, it was this course that started us off. The Hosting Conversations course started our conversations. So let's begin by, how can experiential conversations that you design create change, and for whom?
Thank you, Jenny. It's a pleasure to be here. I think I'd like to answer this in a couple of different ways. And I think that COVID has caused us to reflect on the questions that we ask and the means by which we engage others, simply because we were not in a position to visit in person. So I'd like to sort of separate the ways that you can have those kinds of experiential conversations. And let me pause for a minute and sort of say, when I talk about experiential in the context of tourism, it's meant to find a way to reach to a deeper level where heart and mind are connected. And so when that happens, and I think that you've alluded to it a couple of times, the potential for transformation is there. Transformation of self, transformation in terms of how you look at the world, transformation perhaps in terms of the role of tourism within a community. So when I look at how experiential conversations and the ways that we talk to each other work when we're in person, one of the first things that it's really about is about relationships, building relationships. If we can't have those relationships with the people that are in our network, in that room, in that community, in that region, and those relationships are based on some pretty important preconditions for being able to go further. What does that mean? Well, we need to know how to listen to each other. We need to know how to ask questions that are not trigger questions. And trigger questions are things that we're becoming more and more aware of in a world that is very much black and white, polarized. And so understanding, maybe coming from a very intellectual question about, hi, how are you today, when actual hell has happened in the family that morning, may not be a particularly good question as an opening question. So how do you start a conversation with a community partner? And my wife and I were going for a walk today, and we were just talking about that. And, you know, and you might answer the question honestly if somebody says it, and they might say, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, probably a 6. So how do you answer a question like that? Well, one way of doing that is it's a door that's been opened. And that door that's been opened might say, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. You know, I never thought. Maybe I'm a 7 or 8 today. What do you think makes for a 5 or 6 for you? And all of a sudden the conversation has started. But that's not how we are equipped necessarily to have conversations unless they are with people that we have an established relationship with. So first thing in terms of starting a community conversation that is experiential is being able to open doors for each other. Because if we can't open those doors, we can't get to the tougher things that are around differences, or perhaps different views of the role of tourism within our community, or maybe different methods by which things are done around which substantive differences do not need to occur if respect was there in the first place. I think the second thing that I've learned about what accelerates and amplifies community building in conversation is when it can be centered around something that you do with your hands. You're with a maker, you're making food, you are listening to a story from a local fisherman. These things cause us to pause. Tourism is fast, and I think one of the things that we are all searching for right now to have tourism be a force for good is for community conversations to lead perhaps to a different outcome, which might be what we call slow travel. When we slow down, we're taking time to absorb place. and to actually listen. So there's actually a choreography involved in being able to have hands-on activities take place. Even being with a fisherman to work with a needle to mend a net becomes a place where the mind, the hand, the heart, and the listening to the story converge. And when you do that, and when you slow down, there's a deeper appreciation. A third one might be from really understanding that when you create the component to this building community conversations that are experiential, is that there is documented research around how experiential learning actually allows us to be able to have an experience. And when facilitated well as a travel experience, it can lead to questions that the traveler is able to elicit and move forward with, rather than the traditional notion of tourism being talk, talk, talk with a tour leader at the front of the bus. That's in person. Now, COVID asked us to think differently about experiential conversations online. And how do you do that? And so many of the same things, the same principles have to be applied, but now you're talking in a different kind of a way. And a few things that I've learned about that is that one of the great things about Zoom is we have a gallery to look at. We actually, so if you're in a circle talking to a group of people, you actually don't get to see the expression on the faces of the people immediately to your left and to your right. You're looking across the circle. But in Zoom, there could be 40 people in front of you. All of a sudden, you've got a gallery. You can see instantly people's expressions. And so you have to start to learn that conversation and those responses that are coming, and be able to shift your role as a facilitator in terms of that. But I would say there are three things that are still important. Number one, how do you build a relationship from the very beginning that the conversation starts? What is that? You know, what is the means by which you can have that conversation? What is the means by which you can actually begin to be able to look at open-ended questions that again cause one to pause and to listen to the other person? When you do that right in any kind of a community conversation, one of the things I've noticed that it accelerates the community building in a much shorter time period that would otherwise not be possible, because it's really not tugging people's personal experiences or their personal knowledge into a place of respect, into a place of being in the same fishbowl from which we get to actually meaningfully and respectfully engage with each other. One of the things I've been exploring with a lot of the community conversations that I've been doing online is looking for new ways to engage people. And so there's some different ways to do it. I think we're early in learning what that is. But one of them is, I think Airbnb has learned this very well. When Airbnb had to shift from in-person experiences to Airbnb online experiences, they began to have hosts who were actually doing things in the kitchen, maybe making drinks, maybe making cocktails, maybe making something. And they were encouraging people out there in the world who were participating in the Airbnb online experience to gather those things in their own kitchen. And if they were a skilled facilitator, you were able to actually have a conversation around something you were making or doing. And that amplifies things and accelerates things. I hope that gives a sense of sort of the kind of principles involved and practices.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely brilliant. And I thank you so much, because doing this by Zoom, interacting by Zoom, it's really difficult to establish conversations, to establish those relationships. And I mean, we've spoken 3 times, and it's quite remarkable. I feel as if we have connected across these many waves. Granted, we do have some background experiences which make a difference. So working with Interpretation Canada as I have done, living in Canada as I have done, knowing Nova Scotia where you live. So there is a certain amount of context that builds that relationship. So it isn't just the interaction between each other, it's what goes before and what kind of connections you have within your networks and within your experience. So I'd like to thank you so much, and I hope we can talk again.
Thank you.
Absolutely marvelous. Thank you.
You're really good talking to you. All the best to you and your viewers.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.